Welcome to another episode of Grace Under Pressure. It's a LinkedIn Live show that poses questions to thought leaders and doers whose ideas and actions are helping us come to a greater understanding of ourselves and a greater opportunities that await us. No one exemplifies this better than my guest today, Alex Lazarus. I'll tell her all you about her in a moment. But Grace Under Pressure is, we talk about the soft stuff, the caring, the connecting, the commitment we feel toward others. Grace for me is generosity we show, respect we give, and compassion we demonstrate. And when you do it as a leader, you, especially in our challenging times, it requires us the ability to act for others and energize everyone around us. Welcome, Alex Lazarus, calling in from North London. So welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
I want to tell everybody.
It's a pleasure.
I'd like to tell everybody a bit about you. You're the founder of Lazarus and Maverick, a global consultancy which supports leaders and organizations to optimize their abilities to compete in the world. Before that, you had a significant experience in the entertainment industry. You worked for Virgin headquarters, Fox, and Disney, and you were an award-winning marketer. And I always like dealing with marketers because there's so much enthusiasm and they tend to see a big picture on how things fit together. But you went through a career change.
I did.
And then you went back to school, and now you got your master's. And now you're an executive coach, and you work with teams to help individuals optimize their performance. So welcome.
Alex. Thank you very much, John. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, anyway, today, we're in these tough times. And so what are leaders telling you about how they're coping?
Depends on, what I'm finding is that there are differences in how leaders are coping, and there are various factors related to that. Obviously, industry is a big differentiator. There are some industries we know that are actually coping really well. In fact, this is their moment to shine, come out and serve the global community, predominantly technology content. There are also industries that we know are really, really badly hit by the downturn pattern of the economy that is unfortunately happening post-pandemic or in the midst of the pandemic. And it also, another factor is where you are located geographically. So if I'm speaking with my colleagues in Brazil, there's a different story to those who are, for example, in South Korea. However, there is an overarching an absolute global consciousness that we are a global community now. And as leaders, we have to be compassionate. We have to have empathy. It doesn't come naturally to all of us. Sometimes empathy can be a learned skill. And it's one of the things I do talk to executives a lot, especially executives who have had a particular, let's just call it leadership upbringing in the command control times, who now have to be real, who now have to be comfortable about. And I think it's a great opportunity for some of them to understand the depth and a deeper connection with their teams, with their employees across the world. That actually, if you come across as real, if you come across as somebody that isn't always that perfect shining person on the pedestal, but a real human being with universally similar experiences to everybody around the globe, I think that is really welcomed at the moment by people. People want to have real leaders who understand what they might be going through.
Right. Now, you and I sort of take this as second nature, but for someone who's resistant to it, how do you reach somebody who goes, well, I need to project my authority. If I show empathy, isn't that weak? So what do you say to that?
John, this really happened and would have happened prior to COVID-19 very frequently. And in fact, sometimes it's the core of the coaching conversations is how to show vulnerability, how to show the realness to shine through, and not use that, but leverage that as a great example of leadership. Since COVID-19 has penetrated our lives, personal and professional, there is just very little left to keep on putting that facade on. Energetically, it's very exhausting. And secondly, you will be dealing with your own emotional challenges with your children or your parents or people you work with. I am really sad to, unfortunately, one of our clients have had a very bad situation resulting from COVID-19, where if you hadn't shown compassion and you decided to go down that robotic, automated type of leadership, you would be really quite half human, and nobody is. There has never been in our generation, not even our parents' generation. The last pandemic was the Spanish flu. So, we have not heard anything like that before. So what I have seen an exceptional examples of leaders really rising up to becoming real, not being comfortable, particularly about that, but we talked about it. I coached them through that. And finding that balance that will still show that they care, that they know direction, that they have a direction, and at the same time not reveal, at the same time reveal something about themselves that unites them with other people. But I think this is what COVID has done. It has jolted us. It has jolted us out of our facade for those of us who thought this is the way forward.
Well, great. Thank you for explaining that. Now, in times of crisis, particularly now, but any crisis, what leaders need to survive and organizations need to survive is resilience. And you have quite a remarkable background that I think gives you an insight into resilience. You want to tell a little bit about your backstory?
Which one?
Well, that your time of coming to the United Kingdom when you were very young.
Yes. I joked about which one because I do feel that I am operating very often on the edge of my comfort zone, and I do walk the talk. That's what we inspire people to do. So I do that myself. John, I came to London when I was quite young, and these were the times where I mentioned this earlier on another show just at the beginning of the week with Eddie Turner, that I have come to London where the cultural diversity wasn't as it is now. And I came here very, very happy and very naive and thinking, this is going to be easy. And it wasn't. I was met with many different obstacles that I had to circumnavigate. But I learned very early on is that depends on what card I play. If I play the card that is just so hard here, if I play the card, well, I'm just an immigrant and I'm just a sort of the Eastern European girl. And I have been put in my place, I have to say, on occasions. And I thought, if I play that card as somebody's been put in my place, this is what I will get. Or I can choose to play a card of, I believe in equality. I believe I can do it. I believe I can prove it, that I can do it. And I worked hard to get the jobs that I wanted. Did I have to work super hard? I think at some places, yes. In some other places where they absolutely welcomed that diversity. And I quoted Virgin earlier in the previous interview I did, because they were very much ahead of the time in embracing my difference, me being different, which is quite unheard of now to consider that I was different, but I was. I think I was the only poet.
Well, now that you're a star, and I think so. It's everyone else is different. You set the standard for us.
Oh, thank you. It's when I was at Virgin, that was actually quite easy. But I also think my story. The story of my personal resilience was I was in early teens. My parents immigrated to the US, and I had a lot of freedom as a teenager to live the life however I wanted. So that was a huge learning in self-leadership, in resilience, and a massive learning. It depends what card I play. I could have played all kinds of cards. It was very easy to play a victim card. And then when I did play that card, I saw what it was giving me. It was giving me the kind of fake compassion I really didn't want to have, because that was not what's propelling me forward. What I wanted to play, the card of someone who is capable, someone who is curious, someone who is hungry for the world, and I wanted to attract that energy, and I did that. It was a conscious choice, John, not always easy. And when it comes to resilience, it's about really pushing through moments that are uneasy. Maybe I've been blessed with bigger picture vision DNA, but I have always seen what could be at the end of the tunnel. And I have to tell you, sometimes those tunnels were very, very long and very hard, but I still saw that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. So having big picture especially now for some of us in times of crisis. It is a quality that I encourage everybody to develop.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. And the reason I brought it up, because I think that when, my idea of resilience is it's we're bending but not breaking. And we learn from that bending, but we come back, we will suffer defeats. And so that's great. Now, you've developed a model that I want to share with folks.
Oh, yeah.
And it is, if I can call it up on the screen, right here. Can you see that?
I can see that, yes.
Okay. Well, look, why don't we talk about that a bit?
All right. Yeah, thank you. So, John, I've been very interested in stories of our identities. I've been very interested in how, especially, pre-COVID-19, we talked about how the fourth industrial revolution are changing the way we live, changing the way we nurture relationships, acquire skills. In 2017, just 3 years ago, the former governor of Bank of England said that the fourth industrial revolution is going to even create some loss of our identities. And I see that dynamism of who we are and how we are a lot in my work. A lot of my clients, a lot of female leaders that I coach, they become the breadwinners whilst their husband are in playgrounds looking after the children, something we haven't seen 10 years ago. And there are lots and lots of different shifts. We're told that people will be living longer, and so the typical life stages are also being challenged at the moment as people make critical decisions about their lives at different times of their lives. So this model comes from that exploration of identity, and I have I've used this model both with individuals in our coaching world, but also with organizations. And the idea behind this model is that who we think we are and who we are, whether we are an individual or an organization, is based on three factors. And these are the three C's, which is one is their choices. These are our skills, competencies, it's our values, it's what drives us, it's our vision. Everything that underpins every single daily behavior of mine is underpinned by something quite significant and something deeper within myself. But these are our choices. The choices so this is a very complementing model. So one part of the model is not exclusive and separate from the other. The other part that really defines how we might be perceived and experienced is our character. And at the moment, we are very much tested on that as well. It's our personality, it's our potential, it's the integrity. And we know that through self-awareness, we can do lots with our character. We can make our character stronger. We can work on ourselves. And the last at the bottom, in no order of importance, is our connection with other people. This one comes from my personal experiences where I say no man is an island, and my successes at any stage of my life haven't just been achieved by Alex Lazarus, but it was thanks to the connections that I had with other people, thanks to the relationships I had. And relationship skills, especially I think now in times of COVID-19 and the so-called new normal, relationship skills being interpersonally astute is really, really important in how we manage our way forward. So it's the choice, character, connection that in very simple terms, if we work on those, every single choice we make is going to impact on tomorrow and day after and day after. How we build character, just because, John, I think I'm speaking a lot, but for example, if I've just been told that, I'm always direct and goal-orientated, I can dial up my people focus, my empathy, me being accommodating. And the connections, again, who is in my stakeholder orbit? Am I looking for career development, or am I looking for a group of new, fresh thinking or well-wishers? These are your connection. And organizational level, this is, are we connected with sustainability? Which communities do we support, etc.? It's an endless model that you can work with, but it is driven by those three fundamental core aspects of who we are, which is the choice, character, connection, and it's based on research.
Great. And I like the model because it's rooted in something that I believe that's fundamental to leadership, and that's character. Because if there is no character, there is no leadership. But I think now, as I was, as you were explaining the model, right now, I think top of mind for leaders would be connection. And as you were speaking, I was thinking, while we talk about leaders reaching out, and none of us are self-made. What about the the nurturing that comes from those connections. Do you want to talk about that?
So you mentioned leaders. If I'm actually at the moment doing some a piece of research within a legal profession, and obviously speaking to leaders across all different industries as well. Connection in times of crisis is absolutely paramount. We cannot over communicate. It's about communicating. It's about knowing what the other people are going through, knowing what drives them and their decisions. Because at the moment, people's attention span is really challenged depending on the personal circumstances. And if we challenge, then our decisions it also could be compromised, especially as we tested on so many levels with our life and work merging. So the connection, having a sense that we have a support of our peers, support of our team members, support of my line manager, and I support them back. It's a give and take. This creates psychological safety, which we know that in times of uncertainty, the one thing the leaders should do, and I rarely say about what you should do, I try to avoid that language, but the connection part, the connection piece is so fundamental at the moment that at least the one thing we can create in this uncertain world of ambiguity, VUCA, is some certainty about our relationships. If we have that, we already have a lot under control. And as I said, no man is an island, and a social pain is like a physical pain, and we can mitigate that with one another's support.
That's a very powerful thought, Alex, because we live in an era of ambiguity, and but ambiguity, none of us are, or few of us, I would say, are actually very comfortable in it. But I love the connection that you made, that what does sustain us are the connections, and they are nurturing. So, and I would say something deeper than that would and I think it's in your model too, are values. Do you want to talk about that?
And John, do you mind if I just add something on the connection?
Sure,
and this is related to, it taps into the real scenarios in my work quite frequently. You know, being a CEO or a senior leader, it can be a lonely place. We know that. And now especially, I know the leaders are showing their more human and real face and really joining in that kind of a more humanistic exchange with workplace relationships. But there's one thing that leaders are reticent to do, which is to admit mistakes, is to say, I need this or I need that, I need a little bit more help or support. And I encourage leaders to think about their stakeholder orbit, who is within their nearest and dearest and well-wishers, and who champions them, who is their confidant, who is the safe space to talk to. That connection for people who have positions of in a position of power, in a position of responsibility, is very, very important. Not to be lonely in that space at the top at the moment. And that really goes down to every ranks of the organization. Although rank is not the word I like to use. I speak to young people, I mentor younger people, and even now, especially, you know, millennials, Generation Z, not having an opportunity to be together, to be with groups, especially more extroverted colleagues of mine and friends of mine. I do remind them how important that is for them, and to nurture relationships. Right. And and the values, absolutely. Look, I think we have seen this pandemic has shown us incredible examples of leadership. I think politically, we challenge to find a lot of leaders that will please the wider audiences, and there has been criticism how things have been handled. I think organizational leaders are probably more frequently quoted as someone go-to for inspiration. But in everyday life, we have seen incredible value-driven action on a community level that people have demonstrated, whether it's feeding the nation activity, whether it's dropping leaflets to all the neighbors with the phone number saying, I'm here to help, whether it's supporting people in any other way, to really feel that we've come together in these very, very difficult times. And that's driven by your values. If you know what your values are, these are your anchors in this time. It's not, that's the one thing that reminds you about why you do what you do, and why you continue to do something even through hardship. And I recommend, as a one expression I sometimes use with teams, saying, when you get together again, just double check with each other that you know kind of the operating rules. And the question you can ask yourself is how do we want to be with one another? And what is important for us about being together? Right? And that will reveal the values.
I'm glad you mentioned those little things about with community wherever you are, be it at work, because that's actually the underpinnings of what grace is. And grace is that catalyst, as I define it, for greater good. But we can sometimes be overwhelmed by negative things, and we can think that all things are lost. But I liked your idea of the connection that brings out the better part of us. But that takes commitment, does it not?
It takes commitment. It does take commitment. So it's about, few friends, I'm sure you've had the same thing, have said something. Now I know who my real friends are. And it's about taking some stock, pausing for a moment and thinking about who do I need to give my attention to. But I would also caution against making quick judgments about people, because we don't know everything about everyone and what they're really deeply going through behind closed doors.
Are you talking to
me? You have glided through this. You see, there's an assumption. There comes an assumption, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, but when our lives merge with work, we have to be. I think it's wise to be careful before we cast judgment about people at the moment. But unfortunately, what the pandemic has also exacerbated is social inequality around the world and within our own communities. If you are in lockdown and you have a healthy relationship, you have a steady job, or you have been paid, wonderful, great. You have outside space, amazing. But if you're one of the so-called in the UK forgotten SME that is getting no government relief fund, or you have young children running around, or you have somebody that isn't well and vulnerable in your family, you will also be reacting to this differently. So I just say, really stay curious about what people might be going through and pause judgment for a while, because we just don't know.
That's very good. And I think it leads to my next question. When we are physically separate from one another in an organization, what advice do you give for leaders to stay connected with their employees?
There has been already a lot of good practice implemented across organizations, and there have been some organizations to whom remote work is not a new experience, so they've already had to lead the way. But it's about the one thing. There are lots of different ideas, but the one thing I'd say works really well is to have a ritual which is what time we're meeting and what happens during that meeting. Make sure that it is a gathering of the team precisely at the same time of every single week. And I would encourage, and this is part of the good practice, which was, let's just have, even if it's just 15 minutes when we talk about our personal lives, we need to get these things off our chest. We need to say, what are we grateful for? What are we proud of that we've accomplished? What are the challenges that we have had in the last week? But I would say, when I say ritual, I just said have a routine, and don't, as a leader, don't cancel yourself out of that routine, because it is the one thing that people look forward to, people can control. Of course, the use of technology, so collaborative technology, has really come to the fore, using creative tools for virtual teams, whether it's like Mural or Miro and different other ones, if we cannot work in agile ways and use tangible things that speak to all our senses that we have, whether it's a flip chart, a pen, or a post-it note. Now we can't do that. We can use those virtual tools, which there are plenty of. Another thing, sorry, did you want to say something?
No, please continue your thought. Sure.
There are things like the open fridge hours, which is people just meet for a sunset. I have a one thing, I call it my sunset drink. So around 6 o'clock in London, whenever there's a beautiful sunset on a Friday, I meet with some of my colleagues and friends just for half an hour, a quick sunset glass of wine on a Friday, just to unwind. And it's quite a regular thing that I will do. But it's also the other thing that I have been doing a lot, connecting with people while also taking a walk around the park. It's very difficult to get physical exercise at the moment, but you can merge that with speaking with people using hands-free, using headphones, and still connecting with one another. So I think that there has been a lot of good use of technology and good use of routine. I enjoyed participating and witnessing some of my clients hosting their town halls, which have been more interesting, more engaging. People were invited to talk about the movie they've seen. People were given schedules of upcoming streams of really high value West End shows or Broadway shows. So just bringing a little bit of life into the communication that people normally would have in a lift or in an elevator or by the watercolor machine.
I'm so glad you talked about this, and I love your use of the word ritual, because when you use the word ritual, I'll get it right. It elevates it a bit, and there's a connotation, say, traditionally would be sacred, but it elevates it to a human ritual, which is that form of connection. And I also love the way that you tied in the simple little things, the personal exchanges, what movies you like, or theater, or whatever, because those are things that we are missing from the daily interchange. But thank you for reminding us we can do this virtually. So we're winding down our show. So I always like to ask our guests, what's an example of grace in your life that you would like to share with others? So grace that you've seen.
Grace that I have seen.
It could affect yourself, or the grace that you've seen other people bestow on others. And honestly, Alex, you've talked about a theme throughout today. So it's just, how does grace play a positive role, shall we say? So,
I see so many examples of grace at the moment, and I will extend that, John, to grace under pressure, because I often say that when everything's going according to plan, when I get what I want, when I'm rested, my life is good. I'm a very nice person. I'm a joy to be with. But if I don't get what I want and I work really hard for it, or I'm under extreme pressure under duress for a very long time, what happens to that persona? So I talk about what we are like on a great day, what we are like when we're triggered. And I think that COVID-19, and I know this is not just about that, where we do talk about pressure and crisis, can test us in a way that can also reveal certain weaknesses to that character, to our personality. The first message I will say to myself and everybody else is stay kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be compassionate. It's okay, because this situation is, as I said, testing us on many occasions. When I say to you that I have seen examples of grace, John, I will tell you, because I know this show is also merging some of our leadership insights with personal insights. I have seen and I have experienced that how working parents are pushed to their limits at the moment. When you have homeschooling, when you're running your own business, and you have got a period of time where you really want to demonstrate to your clients that you are agile, that you are future fit, that you are creative, that you are anticipating the kind of problems they might encounter, so you're ready to help in the leadership development space, professional skills space, which we have done. And at the same time, you have got a family where you are supposed to be a role model, the very fountain of grace. But as you're trying to pitch for meetings, and there's a water fight right outside my office, or there are kids coming in, half dressed on a hot day, mommy this, mommy that, it can trigger you. It can trigger me. So I have myself deployed a lot of patience, compassion, and continuous resilience and also what I say to my leaders, just be real now. And it's okay to reveal those parts of yourselves, because we're all in it together. But I think that grace under pressure for working parents is important. It's not about me, this quote, although I shared a personal story, but I also think that we have a responsibility both as leaders to our organizations, but we also have a continuous responsibility to our children and the next generations. They are themselves being thrusted into a very strange childhood, months of childhood. And our role is to continue to giving them psychological safety, lots of love, not to shush them away all the time. But when I speak to other working moms and dads, working parents or guardians, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of exhaustion. People are on the laptops 20 hours, 17 hours a day, and some are at a breaking point.
And thank you for raising it. I mean, personally, my wife and I at our life stage, our children are grown and we're grandparents. So, but I look at folks, and I would know you have children at home. I think you're the true heroes of this because you're balancing a lot of things. You're being parents and you're homeschooling, plus you're running a business, and you have a high profile, Alex, particularly you do, and lots of responsibility, and people look to you as a role model. So thank you for sharing these insights. You have demonstrated what it takes to live and lead with grace under pressure. So I thank you very much for being on the show today. You're a stellar exemplar, and I will continue to follow your work and learn from you. So it's been another episode of Grace Under Pressure. Stay tuned for more episodes coming, and thank you, Alex.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you.